So let's begin by offering our respects to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did we see in the previous class? We are on chapter number
9.
9.
9.
The most confidential knowledge, isn't it? So we were doing the last section in the previous class, subtitled Glories of Devotional Service to Krishna. So here, especially in the last section, Krishna is glorifying devotional service. And as we discussed, only in 2 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's emotions hit its peak, which is the 9th chapter, which is right in this middle of the Bhagavad Gita, and in the last chapter, in the 18th chapter. So here, when he's glorifying devotional service, he's going all out to say that to those who engage in devotional service, first of all, I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. This is a very, very endearing statement by Krishna, that when we engage in devotional service, if we are lacking anything, then Krishna provides whatever we are lacking, and whatever we have, he preserves it for us. So there is nothing to fear, there is nothing to doubt. And there are many devotees who have had practical experience of this. As we advance more and more in our spiritual life, we will see how this statement is indeed so true, so true. By practical knowledge, we can see that it is true. Now we are saying it theoretically, but there have been many, 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 many devotees. If you sit and talk to them, then they will tell you how they have had such wonderful realizations on this. Okay. And then we discussed how Krishna, he appears to contradict himself in verse 29, where first he says he is impartial, and then he says that he is partial. And then we concluded that he is impartially partial in the sense that he opens the doors, he allows everyone to become his devotee. In that way, he is impartial. But once somebody becomes a devotee, then he has a special soft corner for them. So that way he is partial to his devotee. So Krishna is impartially partial. Everyone is welcome to become his devotee. Then what did we see? We saw some controversial verses, right? Some verses which are difficult to understand, but we tried to understand them. When he said that in even if one is committing a most abominable, most sinful action, but if he's engaged in devotional service, he should be considered saintly. He should be considered sadhu. he should not be considered a sadhu, even if he's doing suduracharo, most abominable action. The reason why, because Krishna says in the very next verse, he will quickly become righteous, because he's engaging in devotional service, which is purificatory in itself. Therefore, he will quickly come back on track. He will quickly become righteous. So, even if we see someone who's engaging in an activity which sadhu ideally does not engage in, but if he is engaged in devotional service, and then we have to see that person as a saintly person and not criticize that person. Krishna will take care of him. What happens is between him and Krishna. Same thing applies to us, because sometimes we may behave in a way that a saintly person does not behave, and then somebody may say, oh, you follow Bhagavad Gita, you are chanting, then why are you behaving like this? Say, just the other day somebody told me that he's very short-tempered, and when he's driving, if somebody cuts him off, then curse words come out of his mouth. And then somebody told him that, well, you're a devotee, you're chanting, you're not supposed to be speaking like that. So then I explained to him that we are actually strugglers. We are not yet perfect, right? We are still strugglers, but we are not cheaters. It's not that externally we are doing something and internally we are doing something else. It's not that we are cheaters. We are not mithyacharis. We are strugglers. We are trying to get there. So even if we commit some mistakes unknowingly, by mistake, still, if we continue to engage in devotional service, then Krishna says here that we will quickly become righteous. We will come back on track. So this applies for others and as well as for our own selves. And then Krishna says that declare it boldly. He tells Arjuna that you declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. So we discussed why Krishna tells Arjuna to declare and why doesn't he do it himself. And then we saw the story of how Krishna is going to break his promise very soon on the battlefield in order to protect his devotees. So for Krishna, it's not important that he fulfills his word. What is more important than it is important, but it is not most important. What is most important for Krishna is to save his devotee. That is topmost. That is number one on his priority list. Therefore, in order to save Arjuna, he didn't mind even breaking his promise on the battlefield. And then we saw this other controversial verse where Krishna says that those of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, Shudras, even they can attain supreme destination. But we have to understand that Krishna is not discriminating against women or Vaishyas or Shudras. In fact, this is a verse where he is removing all discrimination. Bottom line, even if one has a starting point which is not favorable, the process of bhakti is so wonderful, it is so powerful that irrespective of what starting point we may have, we can all finish off in this lifetime. Srila Prabhupada said, if you chant 16 rounds and follow the 4 principles under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, then you can go back to Godhead at the end of this lifetime. This bhakti process is so simple that even a small child can participate in this process. So we have to start from verse 33 today. Does anybody have a question? Or we can begin with today's session. Okay, please repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay, so who would like to read today? Can anybody volunteer to read?
Nobody volunteers, I can.
Okay, so okay, so Krishna Kumar can read the translation and Baraya can read the other text. Is that okay, Baraya?
Say it again, please. I can do the.
No, Krishna Kumar volunteered to read the translation. Can you read the other text?
Sure. I will.
Okay.
I
All
will
right.
do the other one. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So let's begin with 9.33.
किं पुनर्ब्राह्मणाः पुण्या भक्ता राजर्षयस्तथा अनित्यमसुखं लोकम् इमं प्राप्य भजस्व माम्.
Translation. How much more this is so of the righteous Brahmanas, the devotees and the saintly kings. Therefore, having come to this temporary miserable world, engage in loving service unto me.
So see, in 32, Krishna said that even those who have unfavorable starting points, like women, Vaishyas and Shudras, even they can attain perfection. So now in 33, he is telling so much more this is of the righteous Brahmanas, the devotees and the saintly kings. So Raja Rishi is the word Krishna uses for saintly kings, right? Raja Rishi. So they are Rajas, they are kings, but they are also Rishis. They are also sages, saintly. The reason why the Kshatriyas were trained up was because it's very important that the leaders of the country or the society are saintly. They have Shastric knowledge and they're also saintly in their practices because they are leaders. It's very important that they rule righteously. And for the well-being of the general public, it was very, very important that the kings were trained up in spiritual knowledge. So therefore, they are called as Raja Rishis. So now Arjuna is a Raja Rishi. He is a Kshatriya, but he's also saintly. He's also a devotee. So Krishna is telling Arjuna that even those who have unfavorable starting points, they can perfect their lives. You are a Raja Rishi. You have a favorable starting point. So you have all the more reason why you should not doubt this process, why you can take up this process. So that's why he's saying how much more this is so of the righteous Brahmanas, devotees and saintly kings. So they have all the more reason that they can perfect because they already have a favorable starting point. Then Krishna goes on to say, therefore, having come to this temporary, miserable world. So again, now he is calling this material world as temporary and miserable. What is the word he uses here? He says, anityam, asukham, lokam. Anityam means temporary, asukham, full of miseries. There is no sukha. So asukham, lokam, the planet which is temporary and full of miseries. What is the, previously also he said that this is temporary and full of miseries. This material world is like that. Does anybody remember the Sanskrit term that Krishna used before?
Dukkalayam ashashvatam mataji.
Yes, exactly. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. So previously Krishna said this is Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. Here he's saying anityam asukham lokam. So this is the nature of the material world. So therefore, what we have to do? He says, therefore, having come to this temporary miserable world, engage in loving service unto me. Bhajasva mam. Mam, he's saying to me. So engage in loving service to me. Krishna is saying Bhajasva mam. Okay, let's go to 34. Now in 34, he's going to explain how to do this Bhajasva mam. How we have to engage in loving service to Krishna. That is what he's going to explain in 34. Now, before we go to 34, let's discuss which book is the essence of all the Vedas?
Bhagavad Gita.
The Bhagavad Gita. Very nice. What is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita? Which chapters?
7 to 12.
7 to 12, the middle 6 chapters. What is the essence of the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita?
Chapter
9
number
and 10.
9 and
9 and 10.
Yes, very nice. Chapters 9 and 10, because these are coming in the middle of the Bhagavad Gita. Now the verse that we are going to see, which is the last verse of this chapter, is dissecting the Bhagavad Gita into two. It is coming right in the middle of the Bhagavad Gita. So therefore, this last verse of this chapter is the essence of chapters 9 and 10, which is verse number 9.34, because this is coming right in the middle of the middle of the middle. So this particular verse 9.34 is the essence of the essence of the essence of the essence of all Vedic literature. Okay, that's how important this verse is. And this is the only verse which Krishna repeats twice in the Bhagavad Gita. He says it here in 9.34, and the same verse he says again in the 18th chapter, in the last chapter. There is a slight variation in the last two lines of the shloka, but the first two lines are exactly the same. Last two lines, there is a slight variation, but the essence is the same. Okay, so this is the verse that we're going to see now.
मन्मना भव मद्भक्तो मद्याजी मां नमस्कुरु मामे वैश्यसि युक्त्वैवम् आत्मानं मत्परायणः ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासूपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे राजविद्या राजगुह्ययोगो नाम नवमोऽध्यायः।
Translation. Engage your mind always thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me.
So this is Krishna's most confidential instruction. What is he saying? How we have to do bhajasvamam, how we have to engage in transcendental loving service to him. So there are 4 components that Krishna is giving us. He's saying, first, engage your mind, always in thinking of me. Become my devotee, offer obeisances unto me, and worship me. So see, Krishna very clearly says whom we have to worship. As a result of that, what happens? Being completely absorbed in me, Krishna says, surely you will come to me. So we have to engage, we have to do bhajasvamam, both at the physical and mental level. When Krishna says, engage your mind, always thinking in me, become my devotee, he's talking about engaging at the mental level. And when he says, offer obeisances unto me, worship me, then he's talking of us worshiping him at the physical level. So both physically and mentally, we have to be serving, rendering devotional service to Krishna. And as a result of that, then surely Krishna says, you will come to me. So with this, Krishna ends this chapter, and especially in the last section, as we discussed, he is glorifying devotional service. And Krishna's emotions are just flowing from his heart. And he says that no matter what, if you just engage in devotional, in this last section, he says, you just engage in devotional service unto me. If you need something, I will provide it to you. Whatever you have, I will preserve it. You will not lose it. Even if you have an unfavorable starting point, you can achieve success. And what else does he say here? He says that so he says that I will deliver you, I will take care of you, and he will even absorb all our sinful reactions, right? So there is no bhakti is the best process that one can take to make our human life successful. Human life is meant for realizing God. Human life is not meant for sense gratification. Human life, this body that we have got, is only to help us realize God and attain success and go back to the spiritual realm. Because we have engaged in so many varieties of sense gratification and so many different bodies, in the bodies of cats, dogs, pigs, even they are also enjoying sense gratification, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So we have experienced so many different kinds of sense gratification and so many different kinds of bodies. We know that there are 8,400,000 different varieties of bodies to suit different desires of the living entities. But human body is not meant for sense gratification, because now we are supposed to our mentality should be, okay, I have been there, I have done that, but now let me use this human body to realize God. So therefore, Krishna here, he is glorifying devotional service, and he says he's giving everything that we need to know how we can use this human body to attain the ultimate destination. So here there is some homework for you all, because here you have a list of how Krishna's position is revealed progressively in the Gita. So here you have some shlokas. So in 4.24, for example, he talks about Brahma, not Lord Brahma, but the Brahman effulgence. So the word Brahma has different meanings. Okay. So then in 9.16, he says, Aham Brahma. I am the topmost spiritual person. Like that. In 7.19, he says, Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. That Vasudev is Sarvam. Absolute truth is Vasudev. But he doesn't say that is me, right? It's like he's talking in third person. But in 9.13, he says that that absolute truth is me. So like that, you have these shlokas. It would be nice if you can actually go and scrutinizingly read them and see how Krishna progressively is revealing more explicitly and more emphatically his position. Initially, he does not reveal so much, but here, as we have progressed to chapter 9, he is becoming more and more emphatic, and very clearly, very explicitly, he's stating what is his position. What is his position? So nobody else has done this. Krishna is not directing us towards some other personality, to some other devata. Very clearly, he says, what is the difference in worshipping him and worshipping the devatas, for example? And no other personality has declared what Krishna has declared. Okay, that is another reason why why Prabhupada named this movement the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Krishna Consciousness. Actually, when he registered ISKCON, he hardly had a handful of people with him. And there was nothing international about this organization at that time, just a handful of followers when he registered the ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And somebody suggested that why don't you register this name as the International Society for God Consciousness? Because this person thought that if you put God, then more people would like to join, because of their preconceived notions about who is God, like that, and especially in the Western world. But then Srila Prabhupada said, no, if I put God, then people will bring so many conceptions of God. Therefore, he said, no, we will name it as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, so that there is no doubt, there is no ambiguity. It's clear that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. Therefore, we have the name ISKCON. So you can see this progression here, and this would be a nice homework, nice project for you all to do. Okay, so in this chapter, Krishna is also establishing himself as the cause of all causes, the supreme controller, the supreme proprietor, and the supreme enjoyer. Cause of all causes means everything is coming from Krishna. Krishna does not come from anything else. That is the meaning of cause of all causes. Supreme controller. There is no controller higher than Krishna. There is no one who owns more than Krishna, because Krishna says that everything material and spiritual has come from him. Supreme enjoyer. That nobody can enjoy independently from Krishna. If we think that we can enjoy this material world without becoming a devotee of Krishna, then we are highly mistaken. Okay, we may have some happiness momentarily, but very soon we see that, for example, if somebody buys a nice luxurious car, he may be happy for some time, but then very soon there is going to be something that is going to take away his happiness. How long is he going to be on a high for having purchased that luxury car, for example? So we cannot enjoy independently from Krishna. But when we become a servant, we are eternally servants. But when we realize that and we engage in devotional service and we serve Krishna, then the joy that we experience, that is something that only those who engage in devotional service would know, would experience. Yes. So he's the supreme enjoyer. We can enjoy only when we serve him. We cannot enjoy independently from Krishna. So here again there are verses which from chapter 9, which establish how Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, supreme proprietor, the cause of all causes, and the supreme controller. So this also you can read offline and you can analyze. Maybe there are a few more verses which you would like to put under these categories. This is also homework. Okay. When I share the slides, then you can go through these verses and see how these verses come under these particular categories. Okay, let's read the summary.
Earlier in the, chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge, verse by verse summary. Earlier in the Bhagavad Gita, knowledge concerning the difference between the soul and the body has been described as confidential. Now, in the 9th chapter, Raja Vidya, the king of knowledge, and Raja Guhyam, the most confidential knowledge connecting the eternal constitutional function or activity of the soul is explained. That eternal constitutional function, Sanatana Dharma, is described throughout the Gita and in the 9th chapter in particular as bhakti or transcendental devotional service to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Purushottama. Verses 1.3. In the beginning of chapter, Krishna says that he will now impart the most secret wisdom, which will relieve Arjuna, whose firm faith in Krishna qualifies him to receive these teachings from all miseries. Verses 4.10. Krishna then explains that the whole cosmic creation rests within him, yet although he is the source, maintainer, and controller of the universe, he remains transcendental and detached from it. Verses 11.14. Krishna next describes the fools, mudas, ignorant of Krishna's transcendental supremacy, who deride his persona, human-like form, and he contrasts them with the great souls, Mahatmas, aware of his divinity, who worship him with devotion. Verses 15.24, 15 to 24. Krishna then describes different types of worshippers. Worshippers of impersonal Brahman, of demigods, and of the universal form, and he describes himself as the actual and ultimate object of worship. 5 to chapter 21. The protector of his devotees, 22, and the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices to the demigods, 23 to 24. Verse 25. Other worshippers attain the abodes of their objects of worship, but those who worship me will live with me. Verses 26 to 28. In the final verses of chapter 9, Krishna talks about his devotees by making him the object of all actions, offerings, and austerities. His devotees is freed from the bondage of karma and attains him. Verse 29, although impartial Krishna favors those who serve him in love. Verses 30 to 31. Even if a devotee does ill, he is still to be considered saintly, for he is properly situated. The process of devotional service itself will elevate him to the righteousness and ultimate perfection. Verses 32 and 33. Furthermore, even persons considered to be of lower classes can attain Krishna by seeing shelter in him. What to speak of those of high birth? Verse 34. In conclusion, Krishna declares that one who is completely devoted to him attains him. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Engage your body in my service. and surrender unto me, completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me.
So with this, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and by the mercy of Krishna, we have come to the end of chapter number 9. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Mataji, I have a small question. May I?
Yes, yes.
In the last 34, which you have spoken earlier also, in the just that I was reading the translation, when it talks about that who worship me. So the physical form and the mental form, like we are, of course, chanting Lord Krishna Mahamantra. At the same time, we are engaged in the physical service. So it's worship. And apart from worship, is it the service, like when you do the selfless service for people, is that also included in that?
Yeah, so see, we have to understand when service to people and service to God. So service to man is service to God is not necessarily always true. Because let's say I'm serving people, but I'm serving them in a way that is not pleasing to Lord Krishna. Let's say I go and feed children in an orphanage, but I'm feeding them meat. Now I'm serving the people, they are poor, they are hungry, right? But what am I giving them? I'm giving them meat. So service to man is not necessarily always service to God. When we serve God, then automatically we are serving people. So okay, it's good to do social service, but we do that social service which would please the Lord. I want to feed the hungry children. Okay, but first I serve the Lord. How? By offering that food to the Lord. So then when I offer the food to the Lord, by serving the Lord, then when I give the children prasad, then Krishna is pleased and I'm also serving humanity. That kind of social service we have to do. So we saw the example of when we water the root of the tree, then automatically the water goes to the other parts of the tree. So Manava Seva is not necessarily always Madhava Seva. Madhava Seva is always Manava Seva. Does that answer your question?
I just feel that it's not the food alone. You do other service, like you are taking care, you're giving the clothes for donation, you are going for collecting the clothes from home to home, and those clothes can be for anyone, like when homeless people, you donate them. Like I have children who come to our door, they do bottle drives from home to home, or the empty milk cans, and that money which is raised, they donate. Or there are other kind of seva projects people do, and the intentions is good. It's not just that they are buying some liquor with that or meat, but they are given for people who are in need, like blanket drives and other things. So those things are also you surrender,
Yeah.
give it to, with that thought that we are helping. Manav Seva is Madhav Seva, or Madhav Seva is Manav Seva. So with that thought you're doing, not the meat serving part I'm agreeing with, but I'm talking about the other services. There is a homeless who's hungry, who's hungry and cold in the -32 temperature, which we have right now here. So in that case, you will think twice. This person need to be given something to eat quickly, otherwise he'll die. He's on the street. And then you want to give him a blanket and some food which will nourish, so you'll give some kind of soup, whatever you make, whatever. But what I mean to say, because you see God, you see Madhav in that person, so your prime priority is to save that person right away. So these thoughts, cannot conflict you at that time, because you are just like a doctor. If you go in the hospital, if it comes a homeless person come, or a very rich person come, so if they are not having that thought, the doctor, that, oh, I have to earn money, then only I'll admit. But in these countries, people, whoever is taken to the hospital, they will be treated. So the doctor treats the patient without thinking that he is dirty, or he or she is poor, they'll just treat with that equal mindedness. So in that kind of situation, I feel little confused, but anyway, this is a big little, discussion. So I won't like to take the time, especially New Year, and we can sort of, but all I say is that what you're saying is, of course, makes sense. But in those conflict situations, you just feel surrender, that is it, and move on and not just judge and make those decisions that you cannot. So because these people are, not the embodying, because you see all these people have God in them, and you look at that rather than look at the bigger picture at that particular time.
Okay, so let's try to analyze this. First of all, because there are some points. First of all, initially you said about charity, collecting cans or giving clothes and blankets and giving in charity. So there are three kinds of charity. There is charity in the mode of goodness, there is charity in the mode of passion, and there is charity in the mode of ignorance. Krishna will explain how charity also, and plus charity should be given when we give charity, we have to prioritize. Charity should be given to the right person also. Okay, first on the list is Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, because they will use the charity appropriately. Okay, so charity in the mode of goodness, we have to give the charity to the appropriate person at the right time and at the right place. That is also very important. Suppose you are giving charity to someone who's engaged in sinful activities, then that charity is probably not going to be used appropriately. Okay, so first charity, we will go into greater details when we come to those verses about where Krishna speaks about charity in the different modes of material nature. So first of all, and then coming to the point that if you see somebody on the road who's hungry and you want to give him some soup, then that soup that you give him also should be prasad. There is no reason why a devotee would give away something that is not prasad. Always, you can, if you're carrying something in your car and you're seeing somebody, whatever you have, it's always because it's a habit in the households of devotees. As soon as something is cooked in the house, it is first offered on the altar, and then it is available to anyone else. And then giving blankets, yes, you can give blankets to somebody as a child. If the child is cold on the road, why not? You can give blankets, etc. But don't stop at that. Maybe you can also, along with the blanket, maybe you can give the child one book, or you can take the child where the child does not continue to stay on the road, or maybe you can connect him, or you can somehow or the other connect him, give him, you know what, there is a temple here at this address. You can go to that place. Every Friday and Sunday they give free prasad to anyone who comes to the temple. So okay, the child will say, okay, I'm hungry, I'm on the road, okay, Friday evenings I can go to the temple and I can receive prasad. So some connection, or devotees, they have shloka cards in their purses, in their wallets, small papers printed with the Hare Krishna mantra. So along with the blanket, you can give that shloka card to the child. You know what, if you chant this mantra, it will be very good for you, or something. Or you know what, let me teach you, because now the child is going to be very happy that he has received a blanket from you, so he is more open to hearing from you, right? So you give him a shloka card and tell him, whenever you are distressed, you just chant this once and you will feel some relief. So you bring in the devotional service along with your social service. Don't just stop with one blanket. So these are the different ways when you can Krishna-ize your social service. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, what else do we need to discuss on chapter 9 before we proceed to chapter 10? Okay, so let's begin chapter 10. Chapter 10 is titled Opulence of the Absolute, or Vibhuti Yoga. Opulence means, of course, Krishna is going to talk about himself here. opulence of the absolute. So he's going to reveal more and more about his opulences. The reason why, because he ended chapter 9 by saying, Bhajasvemam, think of me, engage, worship me, and surely you will come to me. So if somebody just tells us that you should worship me, you should surrender unto me, you should absorb your mind in me, immediately our next question is, why should I do that? Yes. Why should I surrender unto some person X? Why should I absorb my mind in the thoughts of this person X? So therefore now Krishna is going to give the reasons why we have to do what he said in 9.34, and therefore he is going to reveal his opulences. Now when Krishna reveals his opulences, there is no tinge of pride in what he says. He is not revealing his opulences because he's proud of his position. There is no question of him being proud, because what position has he taken on the battlefield? He's taken the position of a chariot driver, and actually he is being kicked by Arjuna because there is a lot of sound, lot of noise on the battlefield. Every time Arjuna wants Krishna to go left, he kicks him on the left shoulder. When Krishna wants to go right, he kicks him on the right shoulder. When he wants Krishna to go straight ahead, he kicks him on the middle. So he is being kicked by Arjuna. He's taken the role of a menial servant. So there is no question of Krishna being proud. Yes, but he is revealing this for our well-being, so that we know why we have to surrender unto him, why we have to worship him. There is no question of following something blindly. Even Srila Prabhupada said, don't blindly follow. Do your research, do your studies, read the Shastras, everything is there. Be convinced of the philosophy before you take up. Because if we follow something blindly, then it's only a matter of time when we will lose faith and we may not continue in our devotional services. But when our faith is backed by Shastric evidence, then we can go a long way and we can attain success in our spiritual life. So therefore, in order to explain why we have to do what he said in 9.34, Krishna is going to speak chapter 10, where he's going to reveal more and more of his opulences. So this chapter has 42 verses. Remember, this chapter is just one chapter before when Krishna is going to show his Virat Roop. In chapter 11, Krishna shows the universal form. So after he reveals his opulences, then upon Arjuna's request, he shows his universal form. So this is just one chapter before Krishna shows his Virat Roop. But before we start this chapter, we have to know why we should read, recite, learn this chapter. What is the Falashruti? What is the benefit of reading this chapter? So these stories are from the Gita Mahatmya of the Padma Purana. Padma Purana is a conversation between Lord Vishnu and Goddess Lakshmi. And then Lord Shiva narrates this to Goddess Parvati. So what is the Falashruti of chapter number 10? Let's see. So Lord Shiva is telling Parvati that in a place called Kashipur, there was a Brahmana called Dhira Buddhi. Now please pay close attention, because there are many names in this chapter and many sub conversations within conversations. So he says that in a place called Kashipuri, there was a Brahmana called Dhira Buddhi. Now this Dhira Buddhi is a devotee, and he is very dear to Lord Shiva. He is as dear to Lord Shiva as Nandi. Who is Nandi?
The Vahana of Lord Shiva.
Yes, the Vahana. Also, imagine Nandi is Lord Shiva's personal servant. Personally, he is serving him. And this Dhira Buddhi, this Brahmana, is as dear to Lord Shiva as Nandi. So wherever Dhira Buddhi would go, Lord Shiva would follow him so that he would protect him and serve him, says Lord Shiva. Now, seeing this, Lord Shiva's eternal servant called Bringa Riddhi. Now, Lord Shiva has an eternal servant called Bringa Riddhi. And when Bringa Riddhi sees how Lord Shiva is eager to follow and protect and serve Dhira Buddhi, he asks him this question. He says, what did Dhira Buddhi do so that you can personally render service unto him? Why do you have this special relationship? Bringa Riddhi wants to know. So now Lord Shiva starts to narrate this story to Bringa Riddhi. So he says, once in Kailash Parvat, in a garden called Punag, where Lord Shiva was sitting and he was enjoying the moonlight, Everything was very, very peaceful. But suddenly there was a very strong wind and all the trees began to shake. And there was this huge shadow that covered the mountain. And it appeared as though the mountain itself was moving. Then Lord Shiva saw that there was this huge giant bird that was coming towards him. The bird descended right in front of Lord Shiva, and he paid respects to Lord Shiva and started glorifying Lord Shiva. He started to offer prayers to Lord Shiva. And then he also offered him one lotus flower. Now, this bird was actually a swan. Now, swans are usually white in color, but this particular huge swan was completely black in color. So Lord Shiva asks him, "You are a swan. How come your color is black?" So now the swan starts narrating a story. Now, this conversation is between the swan and Lord Shiva. So the swan says, close to a place called Saurashtra. Saurashtra is modern day what? Who knows?
Maharashtra.
No.
Kutch.
What was that?
Gujarat, Kutch. Actually.
Yes, Gujarat, but which city?
Kutch.
Surat. Okay, Saurashtra is modern day Surat. So the swan says, close to Saurashtra, there was a very beautiful lake, and where there was a heavenly lotus. And he says, originally my color was white, like camphor, and he was enjoying in this lake for some time. And then after that, he wanted to fly off from that place after enjoying in that lake in Saurashtra. But as I was flying off from that place, suddenly he fell to the ground and his color turned black. Then he hears this voice coming from the lotuses in that lake. Remember that lake had some lotuses. So he hears this voice coming from the lotuses in the lake, and that voice tells him, "Oh swan, get up. I will tell you why you fell down and why your body turned black." So then this bird says that then I went to the center of the lake where there were 5 extraordinary lotuses. And from those 5 lotuses, a beautiful lady came out. Now, the swan circumambulated her because he realized that she is not an ordinary personality. So the swan circumambulates this beautiful lady and now asks her, "Okay, now you please tell me what is the reason for my condition? Why did I fall? And why did my color turn black?" So she says, now this is a conversation between that lady and the swan. So in this conversation, that lady is telling the swan that when you were flying, you flew over me. So that was an offense. You know, when we don't go over a person, we say, no, even elders will tell us that don't cross over a person. That means you are disrespecting a person. It's an offense that you're committing to the person. So this lady says that when you try to go away from this place, you flew over me. And because of that offense, you have fallen down and you have turned black. But then as you were falling, I felt sorry for you. And therefore I called out to you. And when I opened my mouth to say this, the lady says, the scent emanating from my mouth purified 7,000 black bees at one time. And immediately they attained Swarga. They went to heaven. So what is the reason of the power that this lady has? That, you know, just by flying over her in that lotus form, it was this bird had to take the offense, and because of the offense, he has fallen and he has lost his color. And also that just by opening her mouth, she has sent 7,000 bees to heaven. So obviously she's a very, very powerful personality. So this lady says that I will tell you now what is the reason for my power. And she says 3 births before this birth of mine, I was born in a Brahmin family, and at that time, my name was Saroja Badana. Her name was Saroja Badana. And she was married and she used to serve her husband very nicely, very faithfully, very sincerely. But then one day she sees a Maina bird, okay? And then she starts to take care of this Maina bird. And in her taking care of that Maina bird, she becomes neglectful of her duties towards her husband. So her husband curses her and tells her that you will become a Maina in your next life. Now, next birth, she has become a Maina. The Maina's color is black, so she's become a black Maina. But because she was very chaste to her husband and she always adhered to religious principles, this Maina bird came in contact with sages. So she was not an ordinary Maina bird in the forest. She somehow, this Maina bird, as the Maina bird, she came in touch with sages, and these sages took her to their ashram. And one of the daughters of the sages, or one of the sages' daughters, used to take care of this Maina. And every day in the ashram, she used to hear the recitation of the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita every day, twice. Okay, so twice every day she was hearing the recitation of the Bhagavad Gita because she is in the ashram of the sages. Now, because of this hearing, at the end of her lifetime as a Maina, now in her next birth, she has become an Apsara, a celestial personality in Swarga, in heaven. So now as an Apsara, her name is Padmavati. Okay. Now this Apsara Padmavati, she was traveling over this particular lake where this whole incident has happened. So she was traveling over this lake and she sees this beautiful lotus flowers in that lake, and she was tempted to enjoy in the waters for some time. So she goes there and she's in the waters, but then Durvasa Muni passes by. Now we know that Durvasa Muni is known for his short temper. Now she's not dressed because she was in the water. She's not dressed, and therefore Durvasa sees her in that condition, and he's very angry. And she's also very afraid of what has happened. So immediately she takes the form of 5 lotuses out of fear. Two of her arms become 2 lotuses, 2 legs become 2 other lotuses, and the rest of the body becomes 1 lotus. So 5 lotuses her body has become. Now Durvasa Muni is very angry, and then he curses her and he tells her that you will stay in this form for 1,000 years. Now she's become this lotus and she has to stay there for 1,000 years. But remember, in her previous lifetime, because she had heard the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, she remembers that. And that's how she spends her. I'm sorry, the curse was not for 1,000 years, but for 100 years. Okay, 100 years, correction. So now she has finished, her 100 years have passed, but she remembered the 10th chapter. And so she has the potency, she has become powerful. And she has got released from the curse now. But just as when the white swan flew over her, he fell down and he became black, because now she has become a powerful personality, and because of the offense the swan has committed by crossing over her, because of that offense, the swan lost the color and fell to the ground. But now she says that I'm not selfish. I will also teach you this 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita so that you can also benefit and you can get released from this condition. So she recites the 10th chapter and she teaches it to him. And as soon as it's done, then the Vaikuntha airplane arrives, takes Padmavati back to Godhead. Now this black swan takes a lotus from the lake, and then that's what he has taken and offered it to Lord Shiva, and he has recited this entire story to him. Immediately after reciting the story, he gives up his body and he takes birth as a Brahmana, as Dhira Buddhi. So this is the reason why he is very, very dear to Lord Shiva. And as Dhira Buddhi, from his childhood itself, he always was chanting the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Whoever heard that chanting from Dhira Buddhi, now remember Dhira Buddhi, he's in the family of a Brahmana, and every day he's chanting 10th chapter. So whoever hears chanting from Dhira Buddhi, whatever condition he may be, whether he's fallen or he's addicted to intoxication, or even if he's the killer of a Brahmana, he would attain the darshan of Lord Vishnu. And that is why Lord Shiva says, "Oh Bringaridhi, I am always serving Dhira Buddhi." So what is the benefit of this chapter? Lord Shiva says, let's read this.
No voice. Okay.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Chapter 10, Falashruti. My dear Parvati, whether one be male or female, sannyasi or grahastha, in fact, whatever situation one may be in, if he chants the 10th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, he will attain the darshan of Lord Vishnu.
So this is the benefit of chanting the 10th chapter, that one can attain the darshan of Lord Vishnu. So when was the last time that Arjuna spoke? These were the verses that he spoke. Does anybody remember when he spoke these verses?
In the 8th chapter,
In the 8th chapter, very nice. Which part of the 8th chapter?
I think in the starting only, when Krishna recites one shloka and then he asks him what is a Brahman, then what is self, and what are the fruitive activities.
Yes, exactly. So in the beginning of chapter 8, Arjuna has asked these questions. So Krishna has been speaking continuously. Imagine, almost, okay, except for these two verses, the entire 8th chapter Krishna has been speaking. Entire 9th chapter Krishna spoke, and even Krishna will continue to speak till the mid of chapter number 10. So just see the ecstasy, how it is flowing from Krishna's heart. He's been speaking without any interruption, because Krishna just wanted an excuse to speak and glorify Bhakti Yoga. Imagine in the first 6 chapters, Krishna spoke about so many other yoga systems. No, he spoke Karma Yoga, he spoke Jnana Yoga, he spoke Dhyana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. He's spoken all these yoga systems, and Krishna actually wants to glorify Bhakti Yoga. So he has taken this opportunity, and when Krishna got to speak about pure devotional service, when he got to speak about Bhakti Yoga, it's just flowing. So entire chapter 8, entire chapter 9, and the mid of chapter 10. Therefore, the transition from chapter 9 to chapter 10 is very smooth. Krishna just continues to speak. Okay. So let's see what is the connection between chapter 9 and chapter 10. Let's read this.
Connection between chapter 9 and chapter 10. At the end of the 9th chapter, Krishna described pure devotional service and how he reciprocates with his devotees. Krishna concluded that chapter with his most confidential instruction, Mana Bhava Mada Bhakto. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. An imperative to fix the mind on Krishna. Therefore, in chapter 10, Krishna further describes his opulences and potency and position, which will enhance one's attraction for him, thus helping him to fix his mind and remember him while seeing opulent, powerful, and beautiful things in this world. Conclusion of chapter 9 is that one should become a pure devotee of the Lord. Therefore, chapter 10 will increase our devotion by hearing more about Krishna's opulences.
So opulences are especially very useful to attract somebody who does not know much about bhakti, because he may not, one may or may not understand devotion, may not understand bhakti, but opulences he will definitely understand, right? For example, if somebody is, you see someone right in front of you parking a Ferrari, immediately the curiosity would be to see who is coming out of that Ferrari, who is the one who's owning or driving this Ferrari. Yes, so opulence definitely attracts. Opulence definitely attracts. Even in ISKCON speakers, when they are giving classes, when they go to give a class in a university or any other organization, if they are invited to talk, then their opulence, so quote unquote, opulence is mentioned in the introduction. Let's say somebody is an IITian, or somebody is from the Yale University, a very, very prestigious university, or Brown University, or Princeton University, then it is mentioned in their introduction, because the people, the audience may not understand bhakti, but they understand what it takes to graduate from a very prestigious university where it's very, very difficult to get an admission also. So they know that, oh, this person is definitely very intelligent. So immediately the curiosity is there that, okay, I want to hear what this person has to say. So opulence definitely attracts, especially those who do not understand devotional service. Therefore, Krishna is going to talk about his opulences. So at the end of chapter 9, Krishna established pure devotional service to him as the goal of life. What will he describe in chapter 10? His opulences, his potencies, and position. So we are going to see Krishna's opulences, Krishna's potencies, and Krishna's position in chapter number 10. Why is he going to describe this? To enhance our attraction to him. How does knowing Krishna's opulences increase one's attraction or devotion? Let's read this.
How does knowing Krishna's opulences increase one's attraction and devotion? When a devotee understands Krishna's greatness in detail, he feels increased gratitude for his good fortune of being able to reciprocate intimately with such a great and powerful Lord.
So what are the 6 opulences? We saw very early in our Gita classes. What are the 6 opulences of Krishna which establish that he is Bhagavan? Definition given by Parashar Muni, the father of Dronacharya. Six opulences of God.
I think Aishwarya, one was Aishwarya, if I'm right.
Yeah. Opulences means Aishwarya. So what are the 6 opulences? Beauty. Who can complete? Beauty. Then?
Wealth,
Wealth.
power,
Power.
Fame, renunciation, knowledge.
Fame, renunciation, and knowledge. Very nice. There we have the 6. So these are the 6 opulences. And Krishna is that personality who has all 6 opulences to the full extent. So 100% beauty, 100% fame, 100% wealth, 100% intelligence, 100% strength, and 100% he is completely renounced. So God is that personality who has all 6 opulences in full. Here around us, we may see some person is probably very beautiful, but may not necessarily be very intelligent. Some person may be very intelligent, but may not necessarily have all the strength. Somebody may be very strong physically, may have strength, but may not necessarily be wealthy. Somebody may be wealthy, but not necessarily famous. Somebody may be very famous, but may not necessarily be renounced. Yes, but God is that person who has all 6 opulences, and he does not have some percentage of it. He has all 6 in full quantity. That personality is God. So these are the 6 opulences, and Krishna here is going to talk about his opulences. So what 2 major aspects increase our attraction for any person? Other than opulence, opulence we have already discussed attracts. Other than opulence, what can be the other aspect that may attract us towards that person? Would be his sweetness. We discussed how Krishna has 2 aspects, opulence and sweetness. So both these 2 aspects attract us to a person. Now, has Krishna described his sweetness yet? Yes, Krishna Kumar, you have a question?
Yeah, during Damodar Leela, we told his kripa is also very important. Because finally all his powers were not allowing him to be bound. So he said his kripa came up, and that is when all the powers finally allowed him to be bound.
Yes, exactly. So that comes under his sweetness.
Okay.
His kripa, his mercy potency comes under his sweetness. Okay. So has Krishna described his sweetness yet?
Yeah, in some portion where he says no, that he forgives the devotee who actually surrenders into him.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. So this last section that we saw of chapter 9, there Krishna has described his sweetness. So here are all these verses where Krishna says that if you just offer me a leaf, a flower, a fruit, water, I will accept it. If you engage in devotion service, I give you what you lack, I preserve what you have. He says that I will give you this most confidential knowledge, O Arjuna, because you are not envious of me. Then he says that I'm not partial to anyone, but one who is a devotee, to them I am a friend. Even if you do the most abominable thing, even then you will be considered saintly. Even if you have an unfavorable starting point, still you can attain perfection. So like this, Krishna has already displayed his sweetness in chapter number 9. Now let's take some questions. Krishna's opulence is limited or unlimited?
Unlimited.
Unlimited, yes. It's Ananta. Krishna's opulence is unlimited. Now our intelligence is limited or unlimited?
Limited.
Limited.
Now we have limited intelligence. Krishna's opulences are unlimited. So can we understand Krishna's opulence with our limited brain? Can we understand? We cannot understand. So why are we reading this chapter then?
Mataji, if we make some efforts, then we can, I think.
Yeah, we make some effort, because when we make some effort, when Krishna sees our sincerity, then Krishna will reveal the knowledge to us in proportion to our sincerity, in proportion to how much we desire, how much we try to understand. Then Krishna chooses to reveal the knowledge to us. Okay. So this is Achintya, Bheda, Abheda, Tattva. Krishna's opulence is both knowable and unknowable. It's yes and no at the same time. Achintya, Bheda, Bheda, Tattva. We have seen this before, isn't it? So Krishna's opulence is simultaneously knowable and unknowable. How? It is unknowable when we attempt to understand it through our limited brains. But it is knowable when he chooses to reveal it to us. And when does he choose to reveal it to us? When we are sincere. When he sees our sincerity, then he chooses to reveal it to us. So that is again Krishna's mercy. Krishna's mercy. So even though he is unfathomable, he can choose to reveal that unfathomable to us, and he will make the unfathomable fathomable to us. So we have to depend on Krishna's mercy. So chapter 10 is divided into 4 sections. Let's do a few shlokas. I don't know how far we can go, but let's try to do something. Okay, 1 second, I need to get the audio of chapter 10.
अथ दशमोऽध्यायः श्रीभगवानुवाच भूय एव महाबाहो शृणु मे परमं वचः यत्तेऽहं प्रीयमाणाय वक्ष्यामि हितकाम्यया न मे विदुः सुरगणाः
Oh, sorry.
प्रभवं नमः
1 second.
वक्ष्यामि हितकाम्यया.
Okay, now translate.
10.1 screen shows. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna, because you are my dear friend, for your benefit, I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained."
So see, he's telling Arjuna, because in chapter 9, he told Arjuna that this is Raja Vidya. This is the king of all knowledge. This is the most confidential knowledge we saw in chapter number 9. Now he's telling Arjuna, for your benefit, I will speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained. Just imagine, he has given the best, the most confidential knowledge he has given in chapter 9. Now he says, I'm going to give you that which is better than what I have already explained, giving you better than the best. Krishna is telling Arjuna. And why is he going to speak this? For his benefit. He says, for your benefit. And what is a qualification? Because you are my dear friend. Krishna says. Now, friend means a person who is not envious. Remember, Krishna told Arjuna, because you are not envious, therefore I am giving you this Raja Vidya, non-enviousness. So friend is one person, means who is not envious. If we are progressing a lot and somebody is feeling envious of our progress, then he's not a genuine friend because he's feeling envious. But if somebody is our genuine friend, when we progress, then the genuine friend is going to feel happy. So what is it that determines whether somebody is our friend or no is simply this, whether he is envious or he is non-envious of us. So here Arjuna is saying, Krishna, because you are my friend, which means because you are not envious of me, for your benefit, I will speak to you that knowledge which is better than what I have already explained. Actually, in this chapter, in the next class, we will see the Chatushloki, or the 4 nutshell verses of the Bhagavad Gita, the 4 verses that summarize the entire knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. So the Chatushloki, the 4 nutshell verses are going to appear in this chapter. Okay, let's see what Krishna has to say next.
न मे विदुः सुरगणाः प्रभवं न महर्षयः अहमादिर्हि देवानां महर्षीणां च सर्वशः.
Translation. Neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences. For in every respect, I am the source of the demigods and sages.
So what Krishna is going to speak now, even the demigods or the great sages do not know. Even they do not know this knowledge. Okay, so he says Suraganaha. Suraganaha means the devatas or the demigods. They do not know this. And even the Maharishis, the great sages, do not know what Krishna is going to speak. Why they do not know? Because he is the source of the demigods and the sages. All the demigods, all the Maharishis, all the great sages, they have all come from Krishna. So therefore, they cannot know Krishna fully. If we have to take a crude example, father and son, the father may know everything about the son because he has raised the son since childhood. But the son may not know everything about the father, because by the time the son knows that so-and-so is my father, then the father has already lived a certain years of his life, isn't it? So because Krishna is the origin, he knows everybody else. But everybody else does not know Krishna fully. So he's saying that what I'm going to speak, my opulences, that even the demigods and the sages, they do not know. Why? Because I am the source of all of them. So see, these two categories that Krishna has taken, the devatas and the great sages. Now, usually amongst the devatas and the sages, who is more detached? Who is more renounced?
The sages.
The sages, yes, the sages are renounced because the devatas, they live in heaven and they have so many opulences. We know Indra is the king of heaven. So sometimes Lord Indra also gets carried away, isn't it? Because of those extreme opulences. So the sages are very, very renounced compared to the devatas. But still, sages also cannot know Krishna. So renunciation is not one of the factors that is sufficient to know Krishna. Now, let's take power. Who is more powerful, the Devatas or the Rishis?
Vedas.
The Devatas are more powerful, isn't it? Imagine there is a Devata for the sun, the moon, the rain. Srila Prabhupada said that there is a Devata in charge even for the battling of our eyelids, even for our eyelids to To shut and open, there is a Devata who's in charge for that. So these Devatas are very, very strong personalities, very powerful personalities. But even though they are so powerful, they cannot understand Krishna. So even power is not sufficient to understand Krishna. Okay, is scholarship a factor to understand Krishna? Now, demigods and sages are very, very intelligent, extremely intelligent. But even intelligence is not enough to understand Krishna. So renunciation, intelligence, when I say intelligence, we are talking about material intelligence. And power is not, these are not factors to understand Krishna. What is the factor that we need to understand Krishna?
Devotion and love for Krishna.
Exactly, devotion and love for Krishna. We discussed, no? Krishna chooses to reveal this knowledge when we are sincere, when we put in our efforts, seeing our sincerity, then Krishna chooses to reveal. So then Krishna gives us the intelligence. So power, renunciation, and intellectuality is not enough to understand Krishna. We need devotional service. In fact, that is the only qualification. Only qualification. So buddhi comes from bhakti. Intelligence automatically comes from bhakti. When we engage in devotional service, automatically we get the intelligence to understand Krishna. We don't have to be university educated. We don't have to have full knowledge of Sanskrit. No, we may be completely illiterate, but if we have devotion in our heart, then Krishna will give us the intelligence to understand him. Verse 3.
यो मामजमनादिं च वेत्ति लोकमहेश्वरम् असम्मूढः समर्थ्येषु सर्वपापैः प्रमुच्यते.
Translation. He who knows me as the unborn, as the beginningless, as the supreme Lord of all the worlds, he only, undeluded among men, is freed from all sins.
So what is the result of understanding Krishna? Krishna explains in 10.3. Okay, here Krishna is giving us the temporary result of knowing him. Later he explains the complete result of knowing him. So 10.3 gives us the temporary result of knowing Krishna. What does he say? He who knows me as the unborn, Ajam. Ajam means unborn, as the beginningless, Anadim, as the supreme Lord of all the worlds, Loka Maheshwaram, he says. Then such a person, what happens to that person? What is the result? Sarva Papa Pramuchyate. He is freed from all sins and he is undeluded, Asamuda, Krishna says. So this is a temporary result of knowing Krishna. Now somebody may say, but Krishna says that he is Ajam. Even Lord Brahma is Ajam. Because Lord Brahma is not born from the womb of a mother. He came into existence from that lotus, isn't it? So yes, Brahma is also referred to as Aja, but Brahma is not Anadim. Because he does have a beginning. He did come into existence and he is not eternal. He will come to an end. The post of Brahma as a post will come to an end. He lives for 100 of his years. Yes. So he is not eternal. Now somebody may say, okay, but if you say eternal, Krishna says that he is eternal. But even the soul is eternal. Even we living entities, we are spirit souls. So we are also eternal. But we are not Loka Maheshwaram. The spirit soul is not the owner of all the planetary systems. So Krishna is the only personality who is Ajam, Anadim, and Loka Maheshwaram. He's the only personality who's all three, nobody else. So Krishna is saying, one who knows me as unborn, as the beginningless, as a supreme Lord of all the worlds, then as a result of that, that person is free from all the sins. So somebody may argue that, okay, but Krishna also took birth from the womb of a mother, right? He took birth from the womb of Devaki. So how to answer that? Let's read the text.
Krishna is the son of Devaki and Vasudev. How can he be unborn? He appeared before Devaki and Vasudev in his original form, not as an ordinary child, and then transformed into an ordinary child.
So when Krishna appeared in that jail, he actually came in his four-handed Narayan form. He appeared in his four-handed Narayan form. And then upon the request of Devaki, he took the form of an ordinary child. So Krishna appearing from the womb of Devaki is not equal to us taking birth from the wombs of our mothers. It's not the same. Okay, Krishna's appearance is transcendental. So Krishna appeared there. Krishna is not born. That's why we don't say Krishna is born. We say Krishna has appeared. He was existing in another planet before, and here he has appeared. Okay.
बुद्धिर्ज्ञानमसम्मोहः क्षमा सत्यं दमः शमः सुखं दुःखं भवो भावो भयं चाभयमेव च अहिंसा समता तुष्टिः तपोदानं यशो यशः भवन्ति भावा भूतानां मत्त एव पृथग्विधाः.
Translation. Intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt and delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness, control of the senses, control of the mind, happiness and distress, birth, death, fear, fearlessness, non-violence, equanimity, satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame, and infamy. All these various qualities of living beings are created by me alone.
So here Krishna is mentioning some qualities. And then he says that all these qualities of the living entities are created by me. Previously, what did he say? That he is unborn, he is beginningless, and he's a supreme lord of all the worlds. Now he's mentioning some qualities and he's saying these qualities also have come from me. Now, what are these qualities? Intelligence, let's analyze them from the purport of what Srila Prabhupada has written. What is intelligence? Buddhi. Intelligence means the power to analyze things in the right perspective, which means that we should be able to prioritize what is more important and what is less important. We have to rearrange that in our mind and learn to prioritize it appropriately. Sometimes we may give more importance to things that are less important, and less importance to things which are actually more important. So intelligence means to learn to analyze things, prioritize things rightly. Now, for us students of the Bhagavad Gita, by now we have understood, right, what we have to prioritize. Yes, we have material duties to perform, but at the same time, we have to at least give equal importance to our spiritual lives, at least, if not more. Yes. But usually what do people do? They keep spirituality for the end, for later. We will do it later. Yes. And we just go on with our material duties, responsibilities, or even material sense gratification. But Bhagavad Gita teaches us how we have to prioritize, how we have to analyze things in the proper perspective. Then jnana, knowledge means, real knowledge is to understand the difference between matter and spirit. That the body is material and the spirit soul is spiritual. So we have to understand. Krishna in the very beginning, when he started speaking the Bhagavad Gita, he right away went to the root cause of Arjuna's distress, that Arjuna was identifying with his body because he was seeing his relatives on the battlefield. So what Krishna immediately went to the root of the problem and he says, okay, this is the difference between matter and spirit. You are not the body, you are spiritual. That's the first lesson that we learn in spiritual life. Then Srila Prabhupada explains how university education, our education that we receive in schools and colleges, they only teach us about matter. They do not teach us anything about spirit. Okay, one may go 12 years of school life, 4 or 5 years of university life, but never we are taught that we are not this body, we are spirit soul. But when we come to spirituality, that's the very first lesson that we are taught. Therefore, material knowledge is incomplete. It is incomplete. Then freedom from doubt and delusion. Let's read this part.
Slowly, you want me to read from the beginning, or is it
No,
the
no, only
third
the
one?
third point.
Okay. Freedom from doubt and delusion, asmoha. Slowly but surely, one becomes free from bewilderment when one acts without hesitation based on understanding transcendental philosophy. Nothing should be accepted blindly, but with care and caution.
So see, as we discussed before, nothing should be accepted blindly. Srila Prabhupada said, do not accept it blindly. You read the Shastras and there is Shastric evidence and then you can accept. So by that, then we become free from doubt and delusion. Otherwise, if we blindly accept something, then the doubt will always be there. Oh, is it really the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Am I displeasing something by doing something else? Somebody else may try to counter argue against what we are following. So then the doubt and delusion will always be there. Okay, but when we take Shastric evidence, then our faith is strengthened. So freedom from doubt and delusion. Next quality Prabhupada, Krishna speaks of is tolerance and forgiveness, Kshama. So it's the nature of a Vaishnava. One of the qualities of a Vaishnava is that a Vaishnava is tolerant and he's always forgiving. So excuse the minor offenses of others. A Vaishnava never take offenses. Okay, if somebody is insulting us, and we are Vaishnavas and we are devotees, then we don't take offense to the person. It should be practiced. What should be practiced? Tolerance and forgiveness has to be practiced to bear insult and dishonor from others. Usually, if somebody is insulting a person or dishonors a person, then the person is not able to bear it now. But this is something that has to be practiced. And then it comes with spiritual advancement. Then truthfulness, satyam. What is truthfulness? Facts presented as they are for the benefit of others, not distort truth for some personal interest. So truth means we say things as it is. That's why Prabhupada's Gita also is called Bhagawad Gita as it is. Present the facts as they are. Do not distort it to suit someone else. Just because it will please someone else, I will distort some fact and say something else. No. Satya means you present the facts as they are. What is a social convention? To speak palatable, but it is not always good. So we may say something that's that may be very pleasing to somebody else. Oh, you're looking very nice today. Oh, you have worn I don't know what, you're wearing something very nice, or your jewelry is looking very good, whatever it is. It is very pleasing to hear, but it is not always good for that person. One must call a thief a thief. Now, we have to understand also that, yes, we have to speak the truth, but we don't have to speak the truth in a way also that will hurt a person. That is also very important for us. Okay, we speak the truth, but we don't have to speak the truth bitterly. We can speak the truth in a palatable way also. How? Now, my spiritual master, he explains that if you see someone who is not doing the right thing, and for the benefit of that person, not for the sake of criticizing, but for the benefit of that person, you want to tell him something so that he's aware. You want to make him aware that what he's doing is not right. Then you sandwich it between two good things. So let's say somebody is a chain smoker, for example, and we want the person, for the well-being of the person, we want him to quit smoking. So if we just go up to the person and say, oh, you are smoking every day, this is bad for your health, your lungs will get affected, don't smoke, stop smoking, then the person may not like it. Okay, he will say, mind your own business, probably. But if you go and tell that person, look, you are I take a lot of inspiration from your life. I am very much inspired by the way you have led your life. Okay, and then you say, but I'm not able to understand, why do you smoke? Because that is covering your previous, I don't know, whatever quality that person may have. You can glorify that, and then immediately after that, again you say something to glorify that person. So you start and you end by glorifying the person, and in between you put the thing that the person is doing, which is not appropriate. Okay, so you're speaking the truth, but you're not speaking the truth in such a way that it will hurt the person. So This is a nice way of putting it. Okay, truth is bitter, but we don't have to say it in a bitter way. We can say it in a palatable way like this. My spiritual master says that in many classes. Okay, then control of the senses, Dhamma. Senses should not be used for unnecessary personal enjoyment. Don't use the senses for personal enjoyment. Use the senses for service of Krishna. So control of the senses is Dhamma, but better than Dhamma is Shama, where we restrain the mind. Because when we restrain the mind from unnecessary thoughts, then obviously we are not going to use the senses for unnecessary personal enjoyment. So higher than Dhamma is Sama, where we are restraining the mind itself. Let's read point 7.
Control of the mind, Samaha. Restrain the mind from unnecessary thoughts. Misuse of the thinking power to spend one's time pondering over money. Power of thought should be used to understand the prime necessity of human beings and to present authoritatively. Power of thought should be developed in association with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra.
So that's why we need to associate. No, wait. That's why we need to associate with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Because then by their association, we can also we can take the vibration, the positive vibes from them, and we can, in their association, our mind also can become purified. So restraining the mind from unnecessary thoughts. Then now 8, 9, and 10, points 8, 9, and 10 are talking about the dualities. So in the material world, we know that there are dualities, right? Both are there, happiness and distress, sukham and dukham. So 8, 9, 10 talks about dualities. What is happiness and what is distress? Everything that is favorable for our Krishna consciousness will give us happiness. Everything that is unfavorable for our Krishna consciousness will only bring us distress. Although we think that by having some belongings, we may be very, very happy. But if it is not favorable for our Krishna consciousness, then it will only bring us distress. So if we want to, if we are not able to decide at times, should I do this or should I not do this? Then we just have to ask ourselves one question. Is this good for my Krishna consciousness? If the answer is yes, then we go ahead and do it. If this is bad for my Krishna consciousness, then that means we do not do it. Very simple way of resolving these conflicts. Just ask ourselves this question. Is it good for my Krishna consciousness or not? Then birth and death, bhava and abhava. For soul, there is no birth or death. Should be understood to refer to the body. So this we already know. We have already stressed on this many times. Now 10, what is the duality here? Fear and fearlessness, bhaya and abhaya. Let's read this, point 10.
Fear and fearlessness, bhavya abhyam. Fear is due to worrying about the future. According to Srimad Bhagavad 11, 2 and 37. Fear is caused by our absorption in the illusionary energy. Fearlessness is possible only in Krishna consciousness. One is confident of his spiritual identity, engage in transcendental services, surety of his bright future that he is going back to Godhead.
So when one is under Maya, under illusory energy, when one is under Maya, then there is fear. We fear that we will lose what we possess. We fear death. We fear old age. We don't want to grow old. We don't want to die. Yes. So the fear is when we are under Maya. But when we take the shelter of Krishna, then we become completely fearless. Because we know that Krishna is personally taking care of us. We are not scared of death. Because we know that after death, where are we going? We are going back to Krishna. So therefore, fearlessness comes from Krishna consciousness. We are confident of our spiritual identity. We engage in transcendental service. Because we know that we are servants of Krishna, we engage in serving the Lord. And therefore, we know that our future is secure. That in the future, we are going back home, back to Godhead. Let's read non-violence.
Not do anything which would put others in misery, confusion, or distress. that which furthers the future spiritual happiness of the people in general is called non-violence.
So ahimsa only does not mean that we physically or mentally do not offend somebody else or harm somebody else. Ahimsa means we do something for the future spiritual happiness of the people. That is also ahimsa. So these classes now that we are doing, because it is helping our spiritual happiness, then this is also ahimsa. And when we do something that will put somebody in misery, confusion, and distress, then that is himsa. Now, again, we will come back to the example that we discussed in the beginning of the class. If I feed someone meat, then I'm only increasing the person's misery because I'm only increasing his karmic balance. He has to pay for that karma. So I'm only increasing the person's misery. Although externally I may think, because of my lack of spiritual knowledge, I may think that I am doing social service. I may think that I am helping the person overcome his hunger. Yes, I think that I am doing the right thing, but I'm only increasing the person's misery. So actually I am doing himsa. I am not doing ahimsa. That's why not necessary that service to man is service to God. It does not always apply. It does not always apply. We have to be very, very careful what kind of social service we are doing. Are we increasing the person's misery? Again, we can ask that question. Is this good for my Krishna consciousness? Is this good for that person's Krishna consciousness? Then we know if we are doing the right thing or the wrong thing. 12, let's read this.
Equanimity, samatha, freedom from attachment or aversion. Accept the material world without attachment or aversion. A devotee has nothing to reject and nothing to accept, save in terms of its usefulness in the prosecution of Krishna consciousness.
So a devotee does not hate the material world. He does not hate everything material because he can use the material in the service of Krishna. For example, if somebody deserves and desires to go to the spiritual realm and he has reached the spiritual realm, and then Krishna tells him, you know what, I have a mission for you. I want you to go back to the material world and I want you to preach and give my message and save people. So this devotee, although he deserves to remain in the material world, because he does not differentiate between the material and spiritual, for him it does not matter if he has to come back to the material world, because the Lord is sending him on a mission. So it's okay for him to come to the material world because he uses the material in the service of Krishna. So he does not hate material or he does not make a distinction. Okay, for him, the only thing that matters is, can I use it to serve the Lord? Point 13, let's read.
Satisfaction, tushti, not be eager to gather more and more material things by unnecessary activity. One should be satisfied with what is obtained by the Lord's grace.
Yes, so we have our duties, we have to go to work, we have to earn some money, we have to support ourselves, we have to send our children to good schools, good universities. Yes, we have to do that, but we should not over endeavor. Don't be so self-obsessed, right? We be satisfied with what was obtained by the Lord's grace. We do our duty, we go to work, but don't over endeavor and try to get things that is not in our karma. Then we are just wasting our time. 14.
Austerity and penance, tapas, voluntary accepting hardships or suffering for a higher purpose. Example, rising early and taking bath, fasting on recommended days.
So tapasya, we voluntarily accept hardship. Nobody is putting a gun on our head and telling us, oh, you have to do this. But we voluntarily accept some hardships for our own spiritual advancement, for our own purification. Rising early and taking a bath, fasting on recommended days. We know on Ekadasis, we fast, we don't take grains, beans, and pulses. So this is an austerity. This is an austerity that we voluntarily undertake for our own purification. Next.
15. Charity, danam, Give 50% of income to Krishna consciousness, to Brahmanas and sannyasis study
So see,
purport.
yeah, here is the point that we were making in the beginning. No, when we give charity, preferably the charity should be given to Brahmanas, sannyasis, Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. That should be our first preference. Okay, whom we give charity to also matters. That also makes a difference. If I give charity or to a drug addict, it's not the same thing as giving charity to a Brahmana. It's not at the same level. It's not at the same level. Okay, fame. A man is famous when he is known as a great devotee. So that is real fame. How much we are devotees of the Lord. Becoming a celebrity, a film star, a TV star, somebody may be a Michael Jackson, but that is not real fame. Because if somebody is a great celebrity, very famous, but then after death strikes, then the person is taken birth as a dog and a cat, then what is so great about that? What is so great about that? But when we become a devotee of the Lord, we realize that we have to serve the Lord, and then we go back to the spiritual realm, and then we are embraced by Krishna himself. That is real fame. That is real fame. So coming to this point of giving 50% of income to Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada actually is referring to the example of Sri Rupa Goswami. Now, Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, they were both direct disciples of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And they were actually working. That time the Muslims were ruling India some 500 years ago, and they were serving the Muslim ruler, and therefore they had Muslim names. The Muslim rulers would the people who served them, they would have to change their names also, and they were serving the Muslim rulers. So, but then later they decided to give up working for the Muslim king, and then they became stalwart Vaishnavas. So that time this thing happens. Let's read this story.
Give 50% of income to Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada here is referring to the example of Rupa Goswami when he retired from government service. Lord Chaitanya met the two brothers, Dabira Khasa and Sakara Malika, in a village known as Ramakeli in the district of Maladha. And after that meeting, the brothers decided to retire from government service and join Lord Chaitanya. Dabira Khasa, who was later to become Rupa Goswami, retired from his post and collected all the money he had accumulated during his service. It is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that his accumulated savings in gold coins equaled millions of dollars and filled a large boat. He divided the money in a very exemplary manner, which should be followed by devotees in particular and by humanity in general. 50% of his accumulated wealth was distributed to the Krishna conscious persons, namely the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas. 25% was distributed to relatives, and 25% was kept against emergency expenditures and personal difficulties. Later on, when Sakara Malika also proposed to retire, the Nawab was very much agitated and put him into jail. But Sakara Malika, who was later to become Srila Sanatana Goswami, took advantage of his brother's personal money, which had been deposited with a village banker, and escaped from the prison of Hussein Shah. In this way, both brothers joined Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. NOD prefers.
Yeah, so this is from the Nectar of Devotion or the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Prabhupada writes this in the preface. So Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, they were of course very stalwart devotees, but previously they were working for the Nawab. And then when Rupa Goswami decided to join Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is how he distributed his wealth. He had so much wealth, which was equal to millions of dollars 500 years ago, and it would fill an entire boat, Prabhupada explains. So 50% he gave to devotees, 25% he gave to his relatives, and 25% he kept for his own emergency, for his own expenditures in case of any emergency. So this is how his wealth was distributed. So when Prabhupada writes in his purport, charity gave 50% of income to Krishna consciousness, he's telling us to follow the example of Sri Rupa Goswami. Okay. So anyway, what's the bottom line? We have read all these. Let's not lose the track. The bottom line is Krishna is saying all these qualities are created by me alone. So all these qualities also are created by Krishna. So Prabhupada explains that whatever we find, whether good or bad, the origin is Krishna. Nothing can exist independently from Krishna. We have to understand that, because if something can exist independently of Krishna, then that means that is greater than him. And so then that person is more powerful than him. And so that personality should be God. So because God is the supreme personality, nothing can exist independently from him. So even the bad, the origin is coming from Krishna. Let's read this.
Of whatever we find, good or bad, the origin is Krishna. Nothing can manifest itself in this material world, which is not in Krishna. That is knowledge. Although we know that things are differently situated, we should realize that everything flows from Krishna. Purport 10.4 to 5.
So somebody may ask, okay, so how can the bad also come from Krishna? So if I'm doing something bad, then I am not responsible, then Krishna is responsible. Let's try to read this, the last slide for the day.
The sun does not create shadows, but if a person turns his face away from the sun, then he experiences the shadow. So does the shadow come from the sun? Indirectly, yes. Directly, no. The sun does not send our shadows. But then, if the sun does not exist, be no shadows also. Similarly, even the dualities cannot function in this world without Krishna. Specifically, it is coming to us because of our own karmic reactions. But nothing is outside the jurisdiction of Krishna. Chaitanya Karan Das.
Okay, so this is how we explain this. So we'll stop here. We'll continue in the next class. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai.
Okay. Any questions, doubts, concerns? Anything we need to discuss? All right then. So it appears there is no question. So we will see you in the next class. Now, willing. Have a nice week and happy 2022. Hare Krishna.
Happy New Year, Mataji.
Happy New Year, Hare
everyone.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Happy New Year.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Happy New Year, Hare
Happy New Year.
Krishna.